Live from the top of the beautiful towers at Merle Hay Mall, all 6 stories of it, it's Faith Works Live with host Michael Domestis.
And I'm so glad that you're joining us today, Thursday. I was going to say it's a Wednesday. It's Thursday. Today is Thursday, and it's a beautiful day. We've had like a really good stretch of great weather.
Yeah,
and I'm very
all of a sudden.
Thankful for that. It
seemed like March there for a while.
I know. And
It's Iowa.
I'm glad you're with us today in studio, Michael, and I want to we got some good stuff lined up to talk about, but before we get into our main topic, I gotta just deal with something that's making me angry, and that is and it's really connected, I believe, to our topic today, because we're going to talk about wet blankets, and not the kind that you soak in water, but the person that just always happens to be a wet blanket. And today our Wet Blanket Award goes to the Des Moines City Council. They are now literally trying to put a wet blanket on the sale of fireworks. Our state government has passed a law saying that we can be as explosive as we want to be and have fun and celebrate like good old-fashioned Americans and blow stuff up. And now
this is your wheelhouse, Michael.
Yes, it is. It's America. And this is fireworks, man. And nothing gets more American than that.
I feel the redneck coming on now.
But here's the deal. The Des Moines City Council is meeting tomorrow at 11 a.m. and they want to limit the sale of fireworks to industrial zones only, which in effect will completely kibosh the sale of fireworks.
So you're going to have to drive to the east side? Is that what you're complaining about?
You're terrible.
Does the city council have the right to put restrictions on this state law?
Actually, the way that it was kind of put out, I guess, by the state legislature was that, yes, they had a certain kind of time frame that they could deal with the way that this would be mapped out in individual communities.
And so they're exercising their right to do that.
Well, here's the problem.
Okay, tell me.
We have a representative.
Am I going to be the devil's advocate?
Yes, but you can be that.
Okay.
But we have a representative government. They're not representing the populace. They're not. And I think the idea of putting a kibosh on something like this in our city, once it's finally been legalized, I mean, talk about just going against our individual personal liberties. We should be able to do this. I'm so sick and tired of the nanny state telling us how we can live our lives, and even they even tell us what we can throw away in our trash. That's communism, Michael. That's communism.
Well, I have a big enough libertarian itch in me that I'm okay with the new state law.
Yeah,
I just don't like fireworks.
Well, and that's okay.
So I kind of, I have a hard time getting real excited about it.
Well, I'm going to the meeting tomorrow. My representative is Christine Hensley.
Good luck with that.
She's a wonderful person.
There's
that
no
Jesus
libertarian
died for.
itch there that I'm aware of.
Yeah, but the fireworks issue, I'm so excited because I've had to drive to Missouri for years. And I bear this guilty conscience every year for like at least 5 minutes that I feel guilty that I've done this. But now I don't have to feel guilty.
Your pain.
And I can do this, but the city is making it difficult. Now, here's the real thing. The brass tacks is that they are making it hard for small business owners to do business. And why do we want to do that?
People that want to go into business on account of the new state law.
Yes, and isn't it a good thing to have more revenue coming into the state, to the city? That's a wonderful thing, in my opinion. Why are we anti-business on this? The whole thing makes me mad, and it's part of the nanny state. The people that try to tell us, what kind of foods we should eat, and the people that tell us how to separate our trash. I just can't stand it. It's all communism.
And so the biblical application is going to come when on this?
Christ died for freedom. The truth shall set you free.
There you go.
And we celebrate
We're
freedom.
looking for verses that have the word free in it right now.
We celebrate freedom with fireworks.
Hallelujah.
That's what we do.
Okay.
All right. You're a
Yeah,
Calvinist.
I don't need to because everybody around me's doing it, keeping me up all night.
Good.
So.
Good.
There's another
and
aspect
that's the
of this.
sound
And then
of
I have to
liberty, my
pick
brother.
up the
sound
remnants of it in my yard the
and
next
that's the glory of liberty right there.
There's another aspect to this though.
What's that?
And you literally live only maybe a mile from the county line.
A little more than that.
Okay, so that means that on County Line Road on the south side of Des Moines, on one side of the street, you're going to have a whole bunch of fireworks stands set up, and the city of Des Moines isn't going to get any of that, and that's within walking distance for you.
Yeah, no, not really. I would have to be so incredibly motivated.
Bike riding distance?
It would be driving
Or you
distance
can't
easily.
There's too many in the
It's like-
too much purchases for
It's
you to
probably
bring back on
closer
the
to
bike.
3 miles. He's saying it's like a mile, but it's like closer to 3 miles, and I'm not going to walk 3 miles.
Oh, but you would drive to Missouri. Scott Sheridan says, without this, I think this is to you, Michael.
This is my uncle, by the way.
Oh, hi, Uncle Scott. Without the city council, you'd put your eye out.
Yeah, probably so. Probably so.
What would we do without government?
Yeah, well, it makes me mad. And I got to tell you, concerned Des Moines citizens, if you're concerned like me, if you're angry, I say we march into that meeting tomorrow. Join me. Let's rally together for our liberty.
And
We shall be free.
right after that, you'll go out sidewalk preaching, right? Because with all this pent up zeal,
Yes,
that we're moving in the right direction.
you
Yes.
you can join me.
Okay, I'll pray about it. All right.
So
So what about those high maintenance relationships?
yeah, we're talking
Am
about.
I the wet blanket today?
You are kind of the wet blanket today. So that's what we're
man.
talking about. We're talking about high maintenance relationships. We've been talking about this for
I
several
thought we were
weeks.
talking about fireworks.
Yeah, well, that's what is important. But right now, I do want to transition into the topic of.
Are you going to go see Wonder Woman?
I am
Yeah.
actually Saturday.
in,
I'm not going on Thursday night, but
Yeah?
yeah, we're going with our couple in our church, their youth pastor and his wife, and gonna go out for dinner and a movie and
Nice.
be fun. Yeah.
You going to buy?
At this stage, I actually already have. I purchased tickets for everybody,
Oh,
so
nice.
we'll see if they pay me back. So, but yeah, I'm excited. I think it's going to be a good movie. The trailers look really good on the show.
Trailers do really good. I don't know anything about Gal Gadot. Is that her name?
Yeah, I think so. Godot. Yeah, I think so.
I don't know anything about her.
I don't.
She's pretty.
either. I wouldn't. I never
of the
noticed.
movie.
I
She was
never
Miss-
noticed. I'm not allowed to notice.
Speaking of the wet blanket,
yeah.
She
high
was,
maintenance relationships.
She was Miss Universe for Israel.
Oh,
Miss
that's
Universe?
very interesting.
Miss World.
Really?
Yeah.
I
Missed something.
okay. Well, you heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
I'm
I
single.
think it's probably good since both of our wives listen to this program that
Yep.
we're demonstrating a fair amount of ignorance.
Utter ignorance. You
yeah.
knew more about her than me.
I knew her name. It was on the. I think my wife is actually pretty
you know
excited.
what?
She keeps
and on
mentioning this film.
By the way, on this note,
She keeps doing this thing with her arms.
yes, but on this note, I'm really glad they didn't sleaze up Wonder Woman. I mean, she looks like modestly dressed. She doesn't look like, you know what I mean? Sometimes the comic book superheroes, they accentuate things and they show a lot of skin, and that's
Kind of the
not,
same kind of outfit as Linda Carter, it seems to me.
Well, no,
That was more scandalous
Linda's
back then.
Well, yeah, Linda's actually is a little more showing skin than the new Wonder Woman. So I had a crush on Linda Carter, I got to admit, when I was young watching the show on TV. But we're gonna miss that twirl, aren't we? I mean, she doesn't do the twirl anymore.
yeah, the twirl. I forgot about the twirl.
Yeah, remember that? She'd just start spinning around.
Right. And then what would happen at the end of this? She would what did she
be
do?
in her
In
just
the
as she
airplane?
twirled. She would be sometimes she was in the airplane, but no, when she twirled, she turned in her clothes.
Oh,
changed.
that's right.
Yeah.
She would transform.
Yeah, into her
Kind of like
Wonder
the
Woman
renewing
outfit.
of her mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
we're going to bring this around to biblical things.
oh my goodness, she has the lasso of truth. We have the gospel of truth. Hey, Jennifer, thank you for bringing that
Hey,
home
Jen.
for us.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Wow, we need to land this plane, but we need to get back on this. And I do want to talk about. We've been going over the subject of high maintenance relationships.
Yes.
We've talked about the critic. We've talked about the martyr last week, and I had an individual, by the way, come up to me and they're like, what is the source material? Because when you guys were talking last week, I need to get that material.
Well, we should let everyone know
somebody, that fits that to a T. And I'm listening to it and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like this person. And so that was kind of an interesting
So the solution is to give the person this book?
Well,
that never works. I know somebody who should read that.
Yeah.
Oh, I know who should have been at the church this morning.
Exactly.
Well, in the providence of God.
If only so-and-so would have heard your sermon.
Exactly,
Yeah,
yes.
I know.
Yes,
I didn't hear anything you said for me, but if they would have heard it.
Right. So, yeah, we are. This is a book by Les Parrott. It's not a new book, though,
No,
Michael.
it's been out since the early 90s.
But is it still in print? I'm not sure that it is. It's hard to find.
Yeah,
it's a little hard to
is.
find. It's called High Maintenance Relationships.
If you go to Amazon, you'll find it. It's there. And you can definitely get a very...
One of those bookstores in the back alleys of Grand Rapids will have it and be able to send it to you.
Exactly.
That's where to go, by the way.
But High Maintenance Relationships by Les Parrott.
Les Parrott.
And it's fantastic. Yep. So the high maintenance person that we want to talk about today is the martyr.
No, the wet blanket.
Oh, no. Yeah, you're right. The wet blanket. Sorry.
This is the pessimist, the negative person.
So do you know anybody that has said things like this? It's no use trying. You can give it a shot, but you'll never make it. We tried that before. It didn't work. It just can't happen. It's not possible. There's no way. And if you've heard those phrases, particularly from a certain individual, then you know a wet blanket.
Yeah.
Because they are, as you described, very pessimistic.
And we're not talking about just someone who has who's providing some important critical thinking to whatever the conversation is at hand. We're talking about the person who's perpetually negative and pessimistic.
Yes. Yeah. And
because we need to hear from people with constructive criticism.
Yes, we need criticism.
And sometimes this wet blanket is the right person to go to for that. But this is the Debbie Downer.
Most people avoid a person like this because they know no matter what thing it is, you can win the lottery. There's going to be a negative spin on it, no matter what it is.
That is the wet blanket.
Marshall Shelley, who wrote the book Well-Intentioned Dragons, says that these people have a motto: nothing ventured, nothing lost. And you can add to that, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And you have the basic attitude of a wet blanket. These are the people who told the Wright brothers if people were meant to fly, God would have given them wings.
The wet blanket.
Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit more about this when we come back. You're listening to FaithWorks Live, and I am your host, Michael Damastis, and our show is proudly sponsored by Baldwin Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing. And joining me in studio today is Michael Mudloff.
Good to be with you.
My favorite Presbyterian friend.
Your only Presbyterian friend.
No, this is not a true statement.
Oh, there's Roloff.
Well, there is Roloff. I have other Presbyterian friends. I get around. I know a few.
Yeah. Some of my best friends are Presbyterians. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, man. Is there such a thing as religious racism? I mean,
I have no comment on that.
Could I start saying, I've listened to John Piper sermons before.
Yeah, I really like him. Yeah. He's a Baptist, though.
Is he?
Yes.
Oh, all right. See, that's how much I know. Oh, boy. This is going the wrong direction.
The wet blanket.
Exactly.
Uncle Scott's on a roll, though.
Yeah, he is.
He says as a child, sometimes woke up with a wet blanket.
Yes, and I can attest to that. He did.
Oh, Uncle Scott must not be much older than you.
He's 8 years older than me.
All right.
So there you go. Well, hey, we're talking about wet blankets, not the physical thing, but
childhood issue. We're not talking about that.
The kind of high maintenance relationship that many of us find ourselves involved with, the person that is always pessimistic, the person that is always negative. I mean, no matter how excited you are about something, they can make you feel completely defeated and deflated.
That's right. You're excited because you just got a raise, and the wet blanket says, well, it wasn't very much.
Yeah, it could have been more.
Should have been more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they just take all the wind out of your sails. And wet blankets are automatically negative about whatever it is that you get excited about.
Yeah.
And so let's kind of look at what the makeup is of a wet blanket. One of the things that we could use, a word that we could use, is cynical.
That's right. That's right. They are cynical by nature. Always see the downside of everything, or the conspiracy and everything. Cynical.
And they can seem like they're kind of being very thoughtful in what they're telling you, but there's always like a barb, some kind of a pointed almost attack in the other person that they're speaking to. And so that's what's hard.
And one of the ones we talked about or mentioned already is pessimistic. Wet
Yes.
blankets are pessimistic people.
I love what Les Parrott says. Wet blankets suffer from pre-traumatic stress syndrome. They believe that there is, if everything's going well, that means something bad is just about to happen.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, everything is going so well, disaster must be around the corner.
My favorite pessimistic statement of all time: why would you want to get into producing? You can't do anything with that. In your face, Dad. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Wet blanket people are always discounting everything too, Michael.
That's right. And that means that they reject something that's positive by saying, well, it didn't really count.
Yeah.
And
there's always a qualifier.
Yeah, you did hit a home run, but you actually didn't hit 2 home runs.
Or you lost the game anyway, so
Right.
it didn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it was only practice or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They can be very deflating.
Yeah, very similar to what we just said. They are the burst your bubble people.
Yes.
Yeah, snuff out your excitement.
And they actually can kind of sniff out good news. And they want to know about good news just so that they can make you feel bad.
Yeah.
So
just so you know it's not as good as you think.
Exactly. So they're very deflating.
Yeah. And
go ahead.
The other one is fault finding. Another one of the characteristics of the wet blanket, high maintenance relationship people that we deal with at church, at work, in our families, and among our friends. Fault finding.
Yes. Now listen to this. Physicists have learned to place defects into perfect crystals to strengthen semiconductors. And the imperfections, it turns out, give the crystals their most important qualities. And a wet blanket is going to have a very hard time with that kind of a practice because, much like the critic, they look at life with a magnifying glass and they're scanning the environment for potential flaws. Wet blankets zero in on minor mistakes and they try to magnify them beyond proportion.
Yeah. Yeah. Les Parrott is good. He's
Yes,
good.
he is.
And one of the other characteristics he notes about wet blanket people is that they are melancholy. These are people who just cannot think past failure, seem to be always miserable. Now, we do need to qualify this one too, Michael, because it's important to understand that we're not necessarily talking about someone who is clinically depressed.
Right.
But sometimes they carry themselves in a similar kind of fashion.
Exactly. And so it's good to distinguish the two because depression isn't the same thing as being a wet blanket.
No.
They are stagnant.
Yep. Never want to try anything new.
Nope. They don't want to go into
and they'll
new
question
arenas.
you if you want to try something
Exactly.
new. It's a waste of your time. Been down here before. Yep.
They are very rejecting.
Yes. They are very rejecting. People who, when they hear of something, they come upon the negative side of it right away and give you all the reasons why it isn't going to work.
Right. Mm-hmm. They can be contaminating.
Yeah. And we're not just talking about human depravity here, that we're all corrupted by our sin nature. We're talking about the wet blanket, the person whose corrupted sin nature is spilling out and impacting the people around them.
Right.
They just kind of look for the thing that is negative about themselves or about you, and that's what they want to focus on. So they're contaminating people. They
and that's
import their negativity.
one of the phrases that you hear a lot, when you start talking about psychology and, Henry Cloud and boundaries, all that kind of stuff, is that they can be very toxic in nature. And,
Misery loves company, Tara says on Facebook. I think
absolutely.
That's a good way to put it.
Yes.
So do you know anybody in your life who is a wet blanket? We don't need you to give us their name and email address or
put
anything
them on
like
a
that.
list.
But if you have had an experience with a wet blanket, we'd love to hear from you.
I have opened up the door to criticism from wet blankets before, unbeknownst to me, by asking simple questions like, "So, what did you think of that sermon series?"
You learned your lesson?
I have learned my lesson.
You got to pick and choose who you're going to ask for criticism from.
Exactly, and it's important for anybody to know who is going to just dump and rain on your parade, and you just know that's their nature, and you can understand, because you can get hurt by a person that is a wet blanket pretty easily. And so it's important to recognize that's just who they are.
Yeah.
And the experience that you have with this individual is almost a universal experience that almost everybody has with this individual.
And so we all need to know how to deal with it. We need to understand wet blankets and how they function, how they impact our lives, how they change direction, ours, and learn how to deal with that, especially if we're talking about your spouse or a coworker or somebody at church that you interact with regularly.
Heaven forbid it's not your spouse, but that would be a drag, wouldn't it? I mean, that would be tough.
Certainly would.
Yeah, but we do have people like this in our churches. We do have people like this in our families or in our jobs, and we're around them. It's not like we can escape. They're a part of our life just by proximity, and so it's important for us to discuss this because we all have interactions with people like this, critics and martyrs and wet blankets. So what about you? Would you share your story with a wet blanket that you've had in your life, in your job? Give us a call or text us at 515-727-5842. We want to hear from you.
It's Mikey. It's Mikey. He's better than TV. We're listening to Mikey, and best of all, it's free.
That's my mother-in-law, Linda Curry from Kewanee, Illinois, writing jingles for the show. And I am Michael Damastis, and I am your host of FaithWorks Live. Today is Thursday, and joining me in studio is Michael Mudloff, and he is the minister at Westkirk Presbyterian Church right here in Des Moines, Iowa. Urbandale?
Right. Urbandale, yep.
And your service times are?
We meet on Sundays at 9 a.m. for our first service, our traditional service, and when we have a Sunday school hour, and then at 11:15 we have our second service, which is our less traditional service. You like that, don't you?
I do. I think it's very diplomatic.
And you meet at the Fort at what, 10:30?
The Fort Des Moines Church of Christ is at the corner of Southeast 3rd and Army Post Road. Our service time is at 10 a.m. We just have one service. I have Sunday school that's at 9 before that.
9 and 10, easy to remember.
9 and 10. So, you can come join us, and if you want to check out things online. Do you guys put your sermons up online?
Yes, we do.
Good. And our website is godsfort.org. All of our sermons there, you can watch or listen to them, and so a lot of resources there available for you. How about your church website?
Same with us, westkirk.org. There's a image of a speaker on the homepage. You can click on that and find the podcasts.
Nice. Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. What are you preaching on right now?
I am preaching through the book of Revelation.
No honkin' way.
I am.
Fist bump, man. I am currently in a series that I've called The Life of Abraham, and just pretty much started right at the end of Genesis 11, and this coming Sunday.
So you've been reading about the sign of the covenant then, haven't you?
Oh, yeah, I've been all through it, and so let's not go there. But I'm actually preaching on a tough sermon this coming Sunday, Genesis 19. And this is like a rated R chapter of the Bible.
Aha.
I mean, it's tough.
Now that you say that, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, there's some tough stuff in that chapter, and so we're going to just kind of unveil that, and Mama, cover up your kids' ears, and let's go through it. And people that say the Bible is boring to read have not read certain passages of Scripture.
That's right. There's not much that's not in the Bible.
That's the truth.
Yep.
That is the absolute truth. Anyways,
absolutely.
But why I fist bumped you is because I wrap up this series mid-July. And then I'm starting a series through the book of Revelation.
Excellent. You know, and I seem to remember, Michael, that you and I aren't that far apart in the book of Revelation.
Oh, our eschatology, you mean?
Our eschatology, yes, our end times view. Now, I have to qualify that, though, by saying in my sermon series, I don't use labels and I don't use charts.
I'm not
and
intending
we
to...
didn't use the first, 6 weeks going over defining all the labels.
Yeah, I'm not going to be doing any
So
of that.
we didn't do that. We're just kind of making our way through.
Yeah, and that's all I'm going to be doing is just really staying to the text and the application for our lives.
You know what
and-
I've discovered?
What's that?
What I haven't discovered. There is no sucking up of people in the book of Revelation so far. And we're in chapter 16. I'm still waiting for it.
No vacuuming.
No,
Oh, man.
because I thought surely it had to be in there.
All the premillennial dispensationalists are going to be calling in angry.
Yes.
No, that's all right.
Call in and ask for Pastor Michael
Yes.
Damastis.
Mudloff.
Oh,
Hey, I'm glad that you're listening. It's Thursday, and we kind of got sidetracked on that. But I want to address a caller that we've got on the phone. David, are you there?
Hello there.
hey, David.
Hey, brother.
Gentlemen. Hello, Mike, and Chris.
It's good to be with you.
Much of the time listener, first-time caller.
I'm
Good
glad
to
you're
see you,
calling
gentlemen.
in. Yes.
Looking
Thank you
sharp.
for joining us.
Yeah, happy to be here. Hey, so question for Mike going through Revelation. So you don't think the come up here and I will show you the things that are about to take place?
Soon? The things that are about to soon take place? No.
Yeah, that's not a rapture reference? Huh.
No, I don't think so.
Uh-oh. Yeah, I agree with you. But man, it is dug into the culture.
I know. And,
So-
we were talking about it as we were doing our text prep. I bring my staff together, and we have a couple other guys from the church that meet on Tuesday afternoons to talk about the text in advance of Sunday. And we were talking about that very thing. It's even easy for us to try to see everything through the view of the predominant opinion on eschatology, and it's you just have to keep reminding yourself. So
Right.
God's not a Dyson,
Right.
Michael Mack says.
Started laughing when I saw that. So, David, what is your comment
Yeah.
on our topic today, brother?
Well, I was just calling about this idea of the wet blanket.
Yeah.
And as I made the comment on the Facebook
I see
post,
that. Thank you.
I tend to think it is something of a pride issue. And as I've thought about this idea of being a wet blanket, I realize if I'm honest with myself, I've been the wet blanket before. And usually it centers around my own personal pride. Someone else has got a good point, but then I don't even really want to listen and hear their point so much as I just want to share my own point.
Yeah.
I want to share my own perspective.
Or you're
So it's kinda
jealous
like-
of the achievement or something like that, and so you
right.
gotta knock them down a peg or two to make yourself feel better about yourself.
David, do you think that some people
Right.
use pessimism as a defense?
As a defense,
Yes, like a defense mechanism.
that is altogether possible. I think it could be a defense mechanism. It protects who we are and our own ideas, but it can also be, in many ways, just simply a lack of being able to see other perspectives. It's kind of like that old joke about the granddaughter who, for the first time, has everybody in the family over to her house for Thanksgiving, and she's cooking for the first time, and so she's cutting the both ends off the ham, and her daughter asks, "Oh, why are you doing that?" She says, "Well, it really helps the juices to cook all the way through the ham. I learned it from my mother, and she learned it from her mother, and so the granddaughter's daughter goes around and asks the mother, and she says something similar, and then finally asks the grandmother, "So why is it that you cut both edges of the ham off?" "Oh, honey, my pan was too small." And yet, we have our own ideas, and we will not take the time to listen through somebody else's perspective. So it can be a number of different reasons where the whole wet blanket syndrome comes from.
Thank
Sure.
you for that, David.
But I've liked all the thoughts you've said so far.
I appreciate it, David. Thanks for calling, brother, and I'm glad your family made it down there safe.
Oh, yes. Yes, we did. And we're rocking and rolling.
All right. You have a good one, David.
David brings up a good point about the pride issue. I don't think that that's characteristic of every wet blanket. Some people really just struggle with negativity, but I think he does bring up a good point, and Les Parrott mirrors that in the comment that you made, that some people who are wet blankets use pessimism as a defense.
They do.
And he gives us the example in his book about Thomas.
Yes.
The allegedly called Doubting Thomas, who we all should be able to identify with, because and thinking of it as a defense mechanism, Thomas did not want to be disappointed again.
Right.
And so he wasn't going to go along with getting his hopes up.
Right.
If Jesus hadn't really resurrected from the dead.
And I think David, also said some really good things about the fact that we all kind of do this at times, and that's
yes.
And I think when we come back in the next segment here in just a few minutes, we're going to talk about that.
We're going to face the wet blanket within,
because we all have that tendency, I think, But I think it's important to also understand that negativism is something that you learn. It's not necessarily something that is innate, but it's a learned response. It's a mechanism that you deal to cope with things.
Right.
And children by nature, I think we all have a sin nature that you brought up. But the fact is, children by nature typically are pretty happy.
Yeah.
And
of course, the sin nature crops up pretty quickly.
It does.
Before children can even speak. Tyler made a comment on Facebook that I thought was really great.
I did too.
He's not going to buy into the learned response of somebody else, but he gave an example. He said, my former advisor at school said that I'm not grad school material or something. What did he say?
He said,
I'm not grad school eligible.
I'm not grad school eligible because I did bad in one of his classes. He said, and I can't wait to prove him wrong.
Yeah.
And that's really awesome, Tyler. I want to tell you, just good job, buddy, and we're rooting for you too, because I think that the fact is that sometimes you can look at a response that you get from a wet blanket and you can be deflated yourself.
Absolutely.
And it can kind of knock you off.
And I think that was part of David's point. A wet blanket who is stuck on a pride issue or is jealous of your achievement or whatever it is, relishes in you being knocked off course when you're encouraged or excited about something.
And Les Parrott asked the question when he's talking about the wet blanket. He says, could it be that at the core of every wet blanket's problem is a basic struggle with low self-esteem? And I think that's a fantastic question, because I think that's something that we need to take into account when a person is this way, and we just hate to be around them because they're always so negative. We need to understand that maybe they're struggling with some things.
Yeah, maybe they grew up in an environment where they were constantly put down, never encouraged.
Right.
It's just something that they've retained.
So when we come back, we're going to talk about how to cope with this person, not just understand them, but how to actually navigate the difficult waters of a wet blanket when they're
it's hard
doing
to be
their
a
thing.
Wet blanket with this music, though.
It kind of is.
That's why I picked it.
It's disco music. I'm Mike DeMastis. This is FaithWorks Live, and it's Thursday, and I want to ask you a quick question. Did you know that a leaky faucet can actually, if left unrepaired, waste more than 3,000 gallons of water a year? Have you ever heard of a silent toilet leak? Silent toilet leaks occur when water doesn't appear to be running, but is being released anyway. Silent toilet leaks can waste thousands of gallons of water every single year. Nathan Shanks, the owner of Baldwin Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing, sees problems like this every single day. He can quickly, efficiently, and affordably help you resolve any of your plumbing issues. No problem is too small. No challenge is too large. Call Baldwin Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing today. 515-371-4036. That's 515-371-4036. And we have been talking in studio, myself and Michael Mudloff, about wet blankets and just the difficult time we can have when we encounter a person who we would maybe label as a wet blanket. And
the depressed person, the cynical person, the negative person, the pessimistic person.
All of that negativity that can come out, and just the popping of balloons of excitement from other people that they seem to relish in. And we had a comment on Facebook Live Tara said that some wet blankets live in fear of having the rug pulled out from under them. Out of the love for the people in their lives, they may feel it is their duty to try to help others prepare for potential negative outcomes. And I think that's very insightful, actually.
It's a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
And I think that's true. That's one of the things that we know about wet blanket types of high maintenance relationships that we're in, and it helps us to be able to understand those people, and really helps us to be able to respond to them too. I think one of the other things that Les Parrott brings out in his book about wet blanket type folks is that sometimes they believe they are pitted against forces outside of their control. We didn't talk about this much, but it's the idea that, the Murphy's Law kind of person. If something bad's going to happen, it's going to happen. It's going to happen to me.
Right.
And,
exactly.
Or they're just waiting for it to happen, and that there's this power somewhere that's going to ensure that the world is against me.
And this duty sense that Tara's bringing out, that they feel to warn others.
Right.
That's where it's coming from. It's almost like in their mind, it's an act, it's a duty thing, or maybe even an act of love for them to let you know it's going to be bad, and that's it's still hard to deal with them. So how do we cope with them? How do we navigate being around wet blankets? Well, Les Parrott gives several great suggestions, and one of them, and we've kind of addressed this, and that is this: we need to face the wet blanket within.
Yeah, and we've talked about this with every one of the high maintenance relationships we've featured so far, and it's true because as our caller earlier, David said, we all experience times of negativity, of pessimism, when we might be going through a tough stretch or whatever, and we are negative, and we need to recognize that when we're dealing with people who are perpetually the wet blanket, we can identify and try to understand what is causing them to be so negative and pessimistic and unwilling to be an encourager or to acknowledge a great thing that has happened in somebody else's life.
And what spouse can say they haven't popped the balloon from their spouse is coming to them very excited. Oh, guess what happened? And they're telling you something, and you give them that you pop that balloon. But
right.
Yeah, but what about and all
or
of a
just
sudden,
not being attentive.
Or yeah, exactly.
When they have something they want to tell.
Yeah, and
I'm raising my hand on that one.
That's not great. Yes, you were, because I am attentive.
Of course you are. And humble.
Yes, I am. I'm very proud of my humility.
What about this one, Michael? That we need to, when coping with the wet blanket personality, guard against infection.
This is a big deal because Les says, big warning: wet blanket virus is highly contagious.
Yeah,
it's like the flu, and that negativism can just be unwittingly transferred to everybody. Like in an office space, you get this one person that's negative in a meeting. Like, say you're having a brainstorming session, you're trying to get some great ideas to come out onto the table, and you're having this board meeting, and you got some good ideas, and you got that one person that's knocking every one of them off.
Right.
Oh, that we couldn't do that because, and no, that won't work. Here's
Stifling
why.
creativity.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, that negativity then just like it circles the whole room.
Some of us deal better with the infectious wet blanket person than others, though, Michael. I mean, some of us, have figured out, we know this person well, maybe we understand their motives, maybe we understand their background and why they are the way they are. But other people seem to gravitate toward the negativity of the wet blanket and then take it themselves. That's the infectious part that Parrott is talking about. And I think that when I think of this most, I think of the person who you know well, who when they're with somebody else who's a wet blanket, you can tell.
Right.
Oh, you must have been with so and so because you're all negged out now.
And I see.
Have you been hanging around?
Yeah, and that's true. I mean,
Yeah.
we've all can say we've seen relationships where that kind of pairs out. One of the other things that he says is to differentiate between critical thinking and negativism.
Yeah, we touched on that earlier, but it's worth bringing up again,
Absolutely.
Michael, because we do need critical thinkers in our life. Many of us are critical thinkers, and that is a service that is of great value often when it is done and given with grace. And that's not the same thing as negativism. The person who is perpetually negative, the wet blanket, who pours their water of despair on every circumstance. So we need to be able to distinguish between that person, the wet blanket, and the one who is just able to see something, has the discernment to see something, and has given us some good feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. And criticism isn't a bad thing.
No.
You know, when, again, we talked about that with the critic.
It's usually just the way it's delivered.
Yeah, typically. Or if you know the intent of the person giving the criticism.
Sure.
One of the other suggestions is to monitor your inner voice. And I think this is really good, helpful advice.
Yeah. What does he mean by that, Michael?
He says if you live or you work with wet blankets, you have almost certainly had your self-confidence taken down
Right.
a few notches. So you hear people just taking away your ideas, or they're, you know, the some good thing has happened to you, and then they tell you why it's not good, and all of a sudden you start thinking, you know, they're right.
Yeah.
I'm not deserving of these
The
things.
inner voice for us as believers in Christ is the Holy Spirit. That is who is living within us, and we take our value from what God thinks about us.
That's right.
He is the person that's opinion matters most. And so if we can remember who we are because of what Christ has done for us and the value that God placed on us by providing that application for the forgiveness of our sin through Jesus Christ, through his own Son, sending his own Son to die for us, that helps us to monitor our inner voice. It helps us to hear what the Holy Spirit is saying with us, as Les Parrott wants to talk about it here in dealing with the wet blanket, and not let the negativism of that person bring us down.
Right. And I would add just a couple of scriptures from Philippians that the Apostle Paul gives to us, just as one of them is a command, and he says to do everything without complaining or arguing.
Yeah. It's a children's song like that. Do without complaining. I don't know. It's one of those things we teach our kids, hoping that they will actually do it.
Well, hopefully your wife taught your kids that, because
She's the song leader.
Yeah, okay. Your gift is not in that arena. I'm being a wet blanket to you right now.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, but another verse.
I am going to sing for you
Philippians.
one of these days.
Yeah, that's awesome. Another verse that Paul gives us, and this is a fantastic verse, Philippians 4:8. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things.
Yes, think on these things.
And that's really good in terms of understanding, not letting what you're hearing out there, you know, like Michael said, letting the Holy Spirit be that true voice you listen to.
Because
right.
there are other voices.
Yes, there are many.
Yeah. What about this one? He says, have a comeback. Les Parrott says, just as you need to counter negative self-talk with realistic positive messages, you also need to learn how to come back at wet blankets with an expression of your own optimism. That can help me as much as it might encourage the wet blanket.
Right.
You can't count on it encouraging the wet blanket.
Well, I got to get into a quick personal story. I had a gal, there's an individual, I shouldn't have said it that way. There's an individual that has entered the premises of our church building before, and always seems to have this downer comment. First thing is I'm shaking their hand as they're walking in the door, and I remember one time they're like, I don't like the changes in the foyer, you know, and that's right when they walked in. And I'm like, well, it looks nice though, doesn't it? Well, it looks too much like a mall. It doesn't look like a church to me. And I'm like, well, malls can be churchy.
And churches can be mally.
Yeah, exactly. But it's hard. Those having that comeback is a hard thing to do, I think. But the biggest key is understanding to not let this wet blanket determine your worth or your value. That only comes from Christ Jesus. And no other person gets to determine that for you. But it can be difficult to navigate these high maintenance relationships. The critic, the martyr, the wet blanket. We all have them in our lives. I thank you so much for listening and being a part of today's show. And thank you, Facebook Live, for chiming in too. And we'll see you tomorrow. God bless.